enforcement, and so they could make the decision to either approve or deny, right? And so then that person, if they were denied, they would have to go through the appeal process, but what he was saying is this is a denial of our basic fundamental rights. And in the way it was brilliant the way he talked about it, because the big about Bruin is Bruin viewed our 2A rights is not a second class right. And so that's what's really, really important. We have the First Amendment rights, so it gives us the right to do what I'm doing right now. The Second Amendment is the one that gives us the right to keep and bear arms for lawful self-defense. I heard a lot of that this week. I really enjoyed the fact that got on the record. And from a historical standpoint, that was really, really great. And so from there, he did a really good job. And we talked about, the FBI. This one's really, really critical. So I've covered this before, but the FBI has a burden of information that has to be met for them to actually perform these background checks. And under federal law, they're very specific on what kind of information is going to be allowed when it comes to them doing these background checks. And so part of that comes to the fingerprint process. And what's important to note here is the fact the state of Oregon, the criteria for Measure 114 does not meet the limited minimum for the FBI to perform this function, right? And what's really, really brilliant about that is the fact that in Oregon revised statute that the permitting agents, was our LEO, if they do not have the authority to issue these permits without the FBI's fingerprints. And basically it says in the statute that the FBI has to give them an approval so they can go ahead and process the permit so you can have a permit to go buy a firearm. And so, that's what's so hilarious about this situation. And it's literally amateur hour. And I told you, I've been telling you for a long time, this is somebody from the outside of our state writing this legislation. They're trying to copy and paste it all over the country, right? So this is Everytown. This is Moms Demand Action. These are the ones that are going to be, spearheading these situations. And so from that, it's not well thought out. They don't understand. Obviously, they're all attorneys, but there's details that they missed in this situation. And so what it did is it left us a huge opening, for this thing to be struck down. The problem is there is a severability clause. So if, let's say the permit to purchase thing is struck down, then there's still going to be the magazine capacity that we're going to have to deal with. I did talk to our attorney in state court. I gave him an update on my way home. And so I gave him things to look at when it comes to his case. It's coming up in state court. His is going to be a little bit different burden of proof because we're going to be dealing with the state constitution, which is Section 1, Article 27 of the Oregon Constitution, which is, something that is very much more, it's a little bit more cut and dry when it comes to our 2A rights than the actual federal 2A. And so that's a really, really important thing to note there. And so we went back and forth. Then we got to the, obviously the magazine capacity thing, and the way that he's, just describing this, I'm just cheering. Like I'm looking at the people next to me and I'm like, is this really happening? Because I was so proud of what the situation that he was painting for us on the record. And so he talked about our witnesses and how our witnesses said that magazines, and what was brilliant is he went after their expert witness, because the Lucy Allen, which I talked about, the data issue that we had with her. And so with that situation, we talked about how there was 2.2 on average, right? There was 2.2 bullets fired in most defensive shootings that she studied, right? She was the one that also talked about the mass shootings where there's only been 179 across the country, and that's since 1982. And so, which is a big difference than what Moms Demand Action Everytown is reporting when it comes to mass shootings. And so that data is definitely skewed. And so with this situation and the way, Rowan painted this, which was absolutely amazing is when we're talking about a fundamental right, and the way he did it for the judge, it's not a fundamental need. And so, when we're talking in common use, which is that's what been the big debate historically, is what's going to be considered in common use, is literally there's millions of these firearms, there's millions of these magazines, and all of these are being used for lawful purposes by law-abiding citizens, which is hunting, sporting, self-defense, which is all stuff that's protected under the Second Amendment. And so, that was like, I was so jacked up because of this. And I was so happy to hear this stuff. The whole time I'm studying the judge. So every time he would, have something, as I'm done with my notes, I would look up and kind of look at what her demeanor is. Cause I want to know what she's thinking. Is she scowling? Is she nodding? Is she, paying attention to what he's saying? Is she, taking notes? I mean, this is all stuff that I kept record of everything, right? So everything everything that happened, I was very, very particular about the notes that I took. And so, that ended, we went outside. It was great. We were very, celebratory. And so are you guys seeing this? I think I have people tuning in, but I'm not seeing any comments. So I don't know if you guys are engaging or what, but if you are, I'd appreciate it, because that would really help more people see this stuff. And so thank you, Stuart. I appreciate you. And so from that, we went into the interveners. Okay, the interveners are, basically Lift Every Voice's attorneys, and they're funded by, probably either every town there. I mean, that's the special interest that we talked about. The special interest money, they're the ones that are part of the suit. What they're trying to do is to wear us down, take away our ability to fight this through, attrition, right? So their attorneys, they had some slick attorneys. Holy crap. And it was fun to watch. I mean, obviously they're not on my side, but I was impressed. I've seen a lot of the stuff in my history, and these were all the attorneys that were in there. I mean, there was 20 of them, 20 plus. All of them were, A-level attorneys, and which sucks for us, right? Because it costs tons of money. And it's also sucks for us as taxpayers. But my Freedom of Information request asked at a request, I'm going to have those updated totals hopefully next week. And so with that, I'm going to put everything out here, and I'll get a hold of John, hopefully if he'll do another thing, and we will, go at this again, and we'll try to expose more for what this is. Because the problem is, and it came up, and so this is let's focus on one thing for a second. And obviously this is at the end of the testimony, so maybe I shouldn't. I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to do it live. So we're talking about part of the issue here is, and I've been saying this for a long time, is this should have been handled in rules as opposed to being rammed through by the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. Both of those are, those are very, partisan, in Oregon. They're partisan. This, 113, 114, both of those at face value are unconstitutional. This stuff, we should have had a hold before this thing goes into effect, instead of the Attorney General saying to the Secretary of State, this thing has to go into effect within 30 days, because that's what it says in the Oregon Constitution. Okay. We could have solved all this stuff in the legislature. Okay. This is the way it should have gone. Okay. Instead of this, hurry up, let's ram it through and then shut down all gun sales in the state of Oregon, because that's effectively what they did, and also turn all of us into criminals. And so, that's kind of where I'm at, is this, we were putting the cart way before the horse. The cart's on fire, and it's cost us literally millions of dollars, millions. And so that's taking away from critical services that we need to provide for, mental health issues, the homelessness, drug treatment, all this other stuff that's affecting our roads, all this stuff, that's something that we need to focus on. This is totally a misappropriation of our tax dollars, because this is not the way it should have gone. and I don't see it going anywhere like this in any other state. And I follow this stuff pretty closely. And so, that's kind of where we're at. We have to understand, what truly is at stake here. And so today, and this is the thing I want to celebrate. And I know it's hard for some of us to really get behind, but when we're talking about the quorum and denying quorum, it came out 2 or 3 times today from the state. And once on our side, which I understand what he was trying to go with it, is he was trying to say that this should have been already handled in the legislature. And so what was important to note here is, fortunately for us, they can't kick it back to the legislature because there's no Senate to be part of this rulemaking process. Also, it stops 348. That came out in testimony today. They didn't name it, but I knew exactly what they were talking about because all the time I spent up there in the legislature. So the state of Oregon, their defense was trying to punt back to the legislature saying that they have another bill ready to go that is going to be a follow-up and an improvement to Measure 114, which everything I saw out of 348, it's not an improvement, actually makes the whole system worse. And the only benefit is, yeah, absolutely, right here. Our it's a disgraced Secretary of State, and we've been following the money. We've been tracking the money. We've been seeing how much is being spent, how much money is coming into their coffers so they can make these rulings. It's gross. It's really gross, because at the end of the day, after the millions we've spent, we're not any closer to having any kind of resolution. We're also not any closer to having any more lives saved. And so 348 is an absolute disaster.